Hey folks, today I actually just want to visit a topic that I've already covered, but I think there might be a little bit of misunderstanding. You know, I explained to you why BEE will get to every company and why companies are forced to become BEE compliant. And I've had a few calls and I spoke to a few people about it, but there are actually, there are companies that are kind of free for now, that doesn't need to become BEE. So I'm just going to go a little bit more in depth as to when would you need BEE compliance and when would you need to start worrying about it. So the first thing is an EME, or an exempt micro enterprise. An EME is automatically BEE exempt. So all you have to do is do an affidavit, and that affidavit shouldn't cost you money. I know there's guys out there on some of the little sites like Gumtree and those that will sell you an affidavit for $350. An affidavit's free. There shouldn't be money changing hands. It's a little form you're going to fill in. You're going to write a few things. On our site we have a template that you can download if you want to actually do it yourself. There's even a form that you can fill in online. You press submit, you print it out, it gets emailed to you, you print it out, you take it to the police station, you have it stamped in front of a Commissioner of Oaths, and you're a level 4 BEE. So all EMEs are pretty much level 4 BEE. And that's that. As an EME, you don't need to do anything else. You don't need to worry about any other stuff. Okay, then we've got the QSEs. QSEs are under more pressure to become BEE compliant, but we'll go into that a little bit later. Let me just explain to you how a QSE works. So a QSE is anything between 10 and 50 million. And there's a scorecard. That's the 5 elements of BEE that I discuss in another video. So that's your ownership, your management, your procurement, your enterprise development, your skills development, and your charitable stuff. So a QSE has got 10 to 50 million turnover, and you have to go through all of those. So it's going to cost you money. You have to do training, you have to do enterprise development, you have to do all of those things to actually get BEE compliant. And then you've got your generic company. A generic company is any company that makes more than 50 million rand per year turnover. Generic companies, they're the guys that are under real pressure because they have got a very difficult scorecard to get through. There's a lot of stuff that they need to get done to become compliant, and to be quite frank, I'll be extremely surprised when generic companies reach level 1 or level 2 or even level 3. It's hard work. It's not just simple. There's some of the requirements is really, really tough. So those are the 3 levels. But now the question also comes in, because there's another part to it, and that part is, when do you need BEE? Because you could be a generic company and you don't need to be BEE compliant. So let's just go through it and discuss that. So as an EME, you are automatically a level 4 BEE. But if you sell to EME, so say for instance you've got a service and all your customers are EMEs, because an EME doesn't need to go according to the BEE elements, an EME isn't worried about your score. An EME is never going to ask you for your BEE certificate. So even if you're a generic company, but you only do business with EMEs, then there's no need for you to actually worry about BEE, because your client, which are EMEs, is never going to ask you for a BEE certificate. If you're a generic company that does business with consumers, in other words, you've got a shop and you are selling stuff, your client is never going to ask you for a BEE certificate. I mean, nobody's going to walk into a cafe and go, hey, but I want to buy this chocolate, but can you show me your BBBEE certificate? That's not going to happen. Okay. The only problem that you have as a generic, or the one thing that you got to keep in mind as a generic is, if you have certain licenses or stuff, or government type of, where you need to get approvals or contracts or tenders or stuff like that, that might put you under a bit of pressure to become compliant. Okay? But generally, if you don't have government pressure and you're not worried about licensing and stuff like that, you're selling to EMEs and consumers. So in other words, none of your customers are big companies. You're basically selling stuff to smaller companies. There's no need for you to worry about your BEE, because it's not going to make a difference to any of these guys. One of the examples I want to use is a gentleman phones me, and he sells insurance. But he sells insurance to small companies. So it doesn't matter. None of those small companies nobody above this line is going to ask you for a BEE certificate, because they don't need it. They're automatically level 4, so they're fine. So if you do business with people above the line, above this line, not above the line like in advertising, but if you do business with consumers and EMEs and you've got no government pressure, dude, you're lucky. Don't worry about it. Don't get a BEE certificate. If you are on this side of the line and you do business with people on this side, so if you are an EME and you sell to QSEs, or you sell to generic companies, then you need your BEE certificate, because these guys get scored on the amount of purchases or their procurement spend with companies that are BEE compliant. So they get rated, they get rated on their procurement spend with companies that are BEE compliant. So if you're an EME and your customers are QSEs and generics, then you are under pressure. You are going to have to become compliant so that these guys can actually get what they need to become compliant. But once again, if you're an EME and you sell to a generic company that only sells to EMEs, so this guy is not under pressure to become compliant, then you don't need to become compliant. It's sometimes a bit difficult to figure it out, but it's fairly simple. If your customer asks you for a BEE certificate, then you have to be compliant. If you've got customers asking you for BEE certificates, it's probably a good sign that some of your customers want BEE certificates, and then you need to start looking at becoming compliant. So the same thing, if you're a QSE and you only sell to EMEs or consumers, no need. If you're a QSE and you're selling to generic companies or other QSEs, then you have to be compliant. So I hope that settles it a little. On a different level, just a bit of advice, or my point of view. You also need to judge how many of your customers are expecting it of you. I know in my case, I deal with large corporates. So if I don't become BEE and I don't do everything and get it done the way it should be done, I would probably lose about 60 to 70% of my business. I can't sustain that. That will close the business. People will lose their jobs. So I'm forced to go that route. But it's up to you to assess your own business. I mean, if you do 95% of your work for EMEs and you've got one QSE that wants your a BEE certificate, well then, if you're going to lose 5% of your business if you're not BEE, it's a choice you got to make. I would probably not worry about going through all the effort if I'm only going to lose 5% of my business. I would rather try and cultivate more business over there where it doesn't matter. On the other hand though, as an EME, I would advise that because it's no effort and it's no cost, to get your level 4 certificate, it looks good. And if you do run into an opportunity to do business with any of these bigger companies, they will very much appreciate it if you have a certificate. I look at myself, my company falls into this QSE level. And I honestly, you know, if I go to a guest house or my team stays at a guest house and I go on their website and they've got their level 4 certificate there, you know what, it just helps me to get my scores, you know. And it's just, I would suppose, a bit of a common courtesy, because it doesn't cost you anything. It is really no effort. It's an affidavit that you print out, you take it to a police station, you get it signed, you've got a level 4. At least try and help the guys with their backs against the wall. Try and help out the guys that has to go through this. So there we go. That's pretty much a breakdown of the requirements for BEE. And you know, with this you can decide whether your company needs to pursue BEE or not. You also need to think about, if you have a product that you can, even though you're currently only doing business with EMEs, but at some stage there is a possibility, maybe you sell a widget and there is a chance that APSA, for instance, can come and buy a whole bunch of your widgets. Then it might be worth it to just make sure that you've got your qualification or your verification right, so that when that opportunity arises, you do not get overlooked because you are not compliant.